Hey my hero fans, it's Dan with Main Deck, and today I'm going to show you how to be a great explosion murder god with Bakugo One. Let's check it out. Alright everyone, welcome back to Main Deck. Again, I'm Dan. I'm showing you the My Hero Academia deck tech today around Bakugo One, the starter set Bakugo from the rival decks that came out in the very first set. I know it's been a while since we've done a deck tech. I just figured I'd step in and I'm going to take some matters in my own hands and show you guys a little bit of one of my favorite decks right now for the My Hero Academia CCG. So today we are looking at Bakugo One. Like I said, he's from the starter decks. If you go pick up the rival decks for set 1, you're going to get a Bakugo One, and you might think that a starter deck character can't really hang with, some of the stronger cards that get printed in the booster sets, but that is absolutely not the case here, and I'm super excited to show you guys my personal take on Bakugo One. I haven't seen a ton of deck lists quite like this, focusing on some of the areas I focus on, so we're just going to run through the list. I'm going to show you everything, explain kind of why I made these card choices. I think, just to start off, I think this is a very potent deck. I think this is one you can take to any of your local tournaments and win the tournament with. I think it is very solid. I don't think it has quite the punch of some of the top meta decks, talking like your Tokoyami decks, etc. Those decks are going to do that aggressive line just a little bit more consistently, I think. But what Bakugo One does that's really unique is he can go up against the very, very defensive decks that intentionally turtle into you, and he can break right through them. That's kind of his cool thing, is exploding right through them. Now, you do have to play a little carefully. It does involve actually quite a bit of thinking. It's very much a, Bakugo is really a strategic thinker, even if he doesn't show it on the outside, and that's what you have to be to play this deck too. So let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about our character here, Katsuki Bakugo number 1 from the rival decks. He's a 6-hand, 28 health character. And he has 2 abilities on him. He's got Wind, Death, and Fire. This is built on the Fire resource. He's got 2 abilities: a Response, which is after your blocked Fury attack resolves, discard it from the card pool. Before I go into the enhance, I have to mention about this response. I keep catching people who haven't, I guess, really understood what this card does. That response is not once per turn, and it is not complete blocks either. It's as many times per turn as you want. When you have a either half blocked or completely blocked, full blocked attack, you can just pitch it from your card pool. That means you can block Bakugo as much as you want. If he doesn't want to, he will not take the check penalty as long as you keep blocking his attacks. That's his Bakugo's big benefit, is he is relentless, and he'll keep coming at you. His other ability is an Enhance, which is destroy 1 foundation. Your attack gets +2 damage. Now, that is where this is probably the one ability in the entire deck that you have to really think about the most every turn. This means he can give a +2 damage buff to all his attacks, which is very nice, but it does require you to destroy a lot of foundations to do that. And what I find you need to really be thinking about when you're playing this deck is, what is required to get my opponent to block this attack, or to get my opponent to let this attack through. And it really does, we'll go through the attacks here and you'll see in a second, it really does depend on the attack and the part of the sequence that you're at when you're going to start deciding to use this ability. Sometimes you use it on the first attack, depending on what that attack is, because you can try and bait out a block that way and then pitch your attack out of the pool. Sometimes you don't use it on the first attack because you're trying to get the opponent to just take that damage, to go, you know what, that's not high enough for me to waste a block on. I'm going to let that one through. So it turns on other cards in the deck. It is really, there's some machinations going on here. So think about that as we're going through this. I'm going to keep mentioning it, but I don't want this to take forever, so we're going to jump straight into the attack lineup here. And if you are a Bakugo fan, this is a great deck for you, because there is a lot of Bakugo's face in this deck everywhere. Lots of Bakugo, also some good Endeavor stuff from set 3. So let's look right at it. The first thing to mention is that I'm currently running 4 Nitro Explosion Ignition. And this right here, if you're a budget player, this is the cut, right? This is the one. This card probably runs you right now, I haven't checked in a little bit, I think it's around $25 each still, probably. And Nitro Explosion Ignition is a very good card, but I don't think it is an essential card to run in the deck if you want to play a similar deck to this on a budget. Bakugo has a number of other solid attacks you can throw in that are great to start a sequence with. That's where Nitro Explosion is really good, though. Nitro Explosion is a 4 difficulty, 5 high for 4 damage attack that is really just ideal for sitting in the pool for as long as you need it to, baiting out a block on it, and having just kind of a high speed where the opponent usually has to commit some amount of resources to it in order to stop it. It has response. It basically, this is one of the few cards in the attacks where you usually throw it and then you go, yeah, pass. Like, I don't have any enhances to use or anything a lot of the time, because its two abilities are used in the card pool on other attacks. The first one is response card pool. After a Fury attack leaves your card pool during the combat phase, add the top card of your deck to your momentum. This obviously works beautifully with Bakugo's discard from the card pool, and you can use this to set up a lot of momentum for a Howitzer Impact Cyclone later, but really, this version of Bakugo doesn't actually care about momentum that much. The reason Nitro is in here is if they choose not to block it, it's going to deal some damage, and then it'll have the second ability, this enhanced card pool, where you can just remove it to give an attack later on powerful 2. And of course, there's a combination there where you can also use that powerful 2 to get a kill on the opponent with that momentum, but it's not needed all the time. This deck actually puts out so much damage on its own that the powerful 2 is just kind of extra. The main point is that you can just remove this from the card pool later on. And this Bakugo deck is all about managing your resources. And when we get into the foundations, you'll see that as well. But because Bakugo requires you to destroy foundations in order to do extra damage, we really are building a deck where we're trying to minimize our resource expenditure as much as possible. And so that's really what Nitro's for. If you can't afford Nitros, that's okay. Honestly, throw a dart at the wall on a Bakugo or even possibly an Endeavor Fury attack from the latest starter decks, and it'll probably be an okay card to throw in there. There's also some Shigaraki kit cards I would look at that are pretty all right too. So, you know, I don't have an exact recommendation off the top of my head, but it's really not, yeah, maybe if I'll think of something, if you toss in the comments if you want to know a budget option, I'll go ahead and try and find a good option for you to replace this with. But if you're building not on a budget or you already have the whole like playset of everything, for Nitro Explosion, I feel like it's an important card for this deck. Stun Grenade this is Bakugo's biggest gain from set 3 Heroes Clash. This card does it all, absolutely. 4 diff for 4 mid for 4 damage. Fury, powerful 2, stun 1, but hang on to that. It has an enhanced, this attack gets +1 to its stun rating for each attack that's left your card pool this turn, meaning that the later you throw this in the sequence, the more you can stun down with it, because usually if the opponent's not blocking things, you're killing them, which is great. And if they are blocking things, then you are discarding cards from your card pool, and you have your own ways to remove things from your card pool as well. Again, looking at that Nitro Explosion Ignition, you can stun grenade, then you can use this enhance to remove the Nitro from the card pool, and then you can use the stun grenade enhance to get that bonus to its stun rating. Because it doesn't care how it's left the card pool. Removing's great, discarding's great, whatever. Then the other thing it does, and arguably the more important part for this deck, honestly, is the enhance, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 Fury attack revealed this way to your hand, and discard the remaining cards. Stun Grenade finds another attack, and stun grenading into another stun grenade sure feels dirty. That is a great play, and it happens, especially, and then the opponent blocks the stun grenade, and then the next stun grenade has an even stronger stun. You can very quickly run your opponent out of resources with a couple of stun grenades like this, but either way, it just keeps your attacks flowing. Bakugo gets to keep drawing a lot of attacks. It's one of the tenets of this deck is just to keep attacks flowing so that you have nothing standing in your way. They block the attack, you discard it from the pool, you had another attack from the attack, you play it at no penalty, and you just keep doing that, relentlessly attacking until the opponent gives up. The fact that it's powerful too makes it a nice finisher as well, but I also don't hate starting a sequence with stun grenade, as weird as that is. It's just fine to start a sequence with because it draws you another attack, because it still has a little bit of stun just to start things off. It's not the best way to start a sequence, that is the following card or Nitro Explosion, but it's okay. Ignited Arrow. This is a card from the Endeavor starter deck from set 3. This is one of my favorite new cards added to the game. Also, this is a 4 difficulty, 2 high for 4 damage attack, Fury, ranged, and weapon. Of course, importantly, everything in here has Fury. And this is has Enhance. If this attack is blocked, discard cards from the top of your deck until you discard an attack. Add the discarded attack to your hand. This is your #1 way to start a sequence. You start off with Ignited Arrow, and your opponent goes, oh man. Because there's two problems here. #1, you can right away you can pump damage onto it with Bakugo. Put the damage onto this thing if you need to get your opponent to block it, because honestly it's best if they block it. compared to letting it through. So if it's going to go through, you want it to deal as much damage as possible. But if they block it, then you just mill cards until you get to another attack, add it to your hand, and you discard the ignited arrow from the card pool using Bakugo's response, and it's like you're starting your turn all over again, except your opponent now has +1 to block things because they played a block, and they're down a card in their hand, and they might have even spent resources. They probably don't spend resources on this one because it's only at 2 speed. But still, you're running them out of resources, you're making things harder for them, and they're just the same for you. So amazing card to start off a sequence with. And even better if they well, it's best if they block it, but if they don't block it, then you have the punish on the next card, which is instant explosive release. This is a 3 difficulty attack. Love 3 diff attacks. That is a 3 high for 3 damage, fury, enhance. Add this attack to your momentum after it resolves, but this is only playable if your first attack this turn dealt damage. This is one of the cards where you're really trying to, play to what your hand is when you start the turn. If you really want your first attack to deal damage because you have like 2 or 3 instant explosive release and like a howitzer or something in your hand, you might play that ignited arrow and then not pump the damage on it, and then just let your opponent go, well, okay, I don't want them to get cards. It's just 4 damage. I'll take it. They take the damage. Boom. Now your next 3 attacks are instant explosive release on a 4, goes to momentum. Instant explosive release on a 4 goes to momentum, or whatever, depending on what your hand is. And the great thing about this too is there's another enhancer, which is if this attack deals damage, your next attack gets +2 damage. Really, when you dealt damage with that first attack, this attack is just pure gas. It's either going to, again, eat a block, but then go to momentum, or deal damage, make your next attack do more damage, and then go to momentum anyway. And if you don't get your first attack to deal damage, if you have the ignited arrow and they block it and they feel bad about their life, but they did it, then you play the instant explosive release. Now it's just, if this deals damage, my next attack deals more damage. If this is blocked, Bakugo discards it from the card pool. You win. Yeah, it's setting up these win-win scenarios, putting the opponent between a rock and a hard place constantly, and that's what you're doing in this deck. I love this card. Easy 4 for the deck is it's just your sort of bread and butter, keeping your sequence flowing every time, and doing other things you want to do too. Just getting that momentum is nice for when you have Howitzer Impact Cyclone. So we have a couple of sort of haymaker swings in here. A lot of the deck is just trying to push through damage with like stun grenades, arrows, nitros, and explosive releases. But when it's time to really turn the heat up, I guess, when it's time to really make things explode on your opponent here, we have Howitzer Impact Cyclone as a 2-up, which is a 5 difficulty, 3 high for 6 damage. Fury, powerful 3, slam, and combo Fury. This is now you have to be thinking, right? Remember, we're strategy Bakugo here. So combo enhance means you do have to keep a Fury in your card pool. You can't discard everything. So you have to be thinking about that when you're playing Howitzer, not just always discarding things if they're blocked. If you need to follow up with Howitzer next, you need to keep something in the card pool. Again, this is where Nitro Explosion is so nice. It can sit in the card pool to turn on the combo of Howitzer, and then it can remove itself to clear that card pool a little bit and keep your resources a little less demanding on you. This has combo enhance, add the top card of your deck to your momentum. Nice combo, gives you momentum. This is the payoff for any of your things that do stack momentum here, because then it has enhance, destroy 1 foundation, draw 1 card for each of your momentum. Again, another card that does destroy your own foundation, so you do have to be careful about your resource management with this. But with this card, you can usually draw 2, 3, if you get more cards than that, you're certainly looking like you're in a pretty good place. You can then dump your momentum to stack powerful into this thing, especially if you've already worn through your opponent's defenses and you just need to finish the job. That's what this is here for. Or if you just really need to get your opponent to block this thing, you don't have to use all your momentum on powerful. You can just push the damage up to 9, 12, whatever, without having to destroy more of your foundations. And then get your opponent to go, well, if I don't block this, I die, so I block it, and then you go, okay, then I'll discard it from the card pool, and then I just drew into another Howitzer or something. So it really does a good job of like closing the game out. It is not at a 4 of because if you draw a bunch of Howitzers, you're not actually in a really good place. You're in a place where you have to kind of pass the turn, and Bakugo wants to keep the heat on constantly. So all of the 4-ofs in the decks are the ones where you just want to see a bunch of copies of these and be stringing with them. The Howitzer, you probably just want to see 1, and then and be ending the game around that point. Same thing with the last attack card, which is Prominence Burn. This is Endeavor's big attack, his foil attack from the starter deck. I adore this card also. This is a 6 diff attack, which is I do understand a tall order for a deck that's destroying our own foundations pretty constantly, but trust me, this is worth it. It is a 4 high for 7 damage, Fury ranged with Enhance. Remove the top card of your deck. This attack gets +2 speed, and your next Fury attack gets +2 speed. This really makes the opponent have to put a lot of resources into blocking it, and if they don't, you obviously can add on Bakugo's Enhance to add +2 more damage, make it dealing 9 damage, and in addition to that, it has the second Enhance on it, which is remove 1 Fury attack from your card pool, which again will trigger Stun Grenade, getting more stun if you follow this up with a Stun Grenade or something. And then your rival loses 3 health. It can reduce your rival below 1 health. So really, you're looking at, in Bakugo, this attack is throwing out about 12 damage worth on average of threat there if the opponent chooses not to block it. And if they do block it, that good old Bakugo Enhance, just discard it right from the card pool again, and then play another or play something else. So I love that about Bakugo, that it's just kind of, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't against him. You're either taking a ton of damage or he's just going to not be punished and keep attacking you over and over again. Prominence Burn adds some serious high damage packed into one thing. It does buff speed as well, so it helps you get in, like these following up with a howitzer, getting the plus speed bonus on there can be really nice. If you have a sequence with some stun grenades where you're getting to commit the opponent's foundations to really reduce their ability to pay for fast attacks, Prominence helps with that. And the fact that this just has that guaranteed 3 life loss also is really nice. This can actually really surprise people who are feeling like they're being fairly defensive. It's not too hard to 1-turn kill people with this deck, and 2-turn kills are probably the most common. But your opponent can go from, as a 5-hander, you can actually take them out in 1 turn with all this incremental sort of life loss and pushing damage and stuff, just depending on how they thought they would try and deal with you. And it's a fun deck to play, let me tell you. So that's our attack lineup. Before we move to the foundations, I just want to talk about the actions really quick, because these are pretty straightforward and simple. Seizing the advantage is one of the best actions in the game currently. It does have one drawback, which is that it is not a great card to see on your opening hand. But otherwise, this is a great tech piece. It gives some extra speed to your attacks, which again helps punish the opponent more for blocking, or helps you force through that first damage to get instant explosive release online. And then it lets you, most importantly, flip a rival foundation to get rid of an important defensive piece that's going to slow you down. I definitely recommend cards like Sticky Balls that are going to try and clog up your card pool. You got to get rid of those as quick as you can, because Bakugo does not like his card pool being clogged. And then it builds itself face down, which is extra awesome for Bakugo, because he just wants stuff that he can destroy later to get extra damage with. Go for the Win is in here for a very similar reason. One, it's a nice low block, and honestly, while we're trying not to be very defensive, it's nice to have those sometimes. But this gives you a way to, right in the middle of the turn, destroy a foundation you've committed to play an attack. That's the ideal scenario, of course, to then build the top 2 cards of your deck and remove it. You're almost always going to have fewer foundations than your opponent, because you are constantly destroying yours. And if you do have more than your opponent, you can just get yourself down. Pump some damage in your attacks and then go for the win and get a few more foundations, and it just gives you gas to keep going. And if you really need to, you can use the response on it to give an attack +2 speed to go for the win, of course. But it's there for the foundations. That's really what you want with it. So speaking of foundations, let's jump right into those now. So we're going in ascending order of difficulty here, starting with our 0 diffs quick to act. We have this as a 4 of. I tested this at some different numbers, and I have liked it so much that it is a 4 of now for sure. Bakugo, like I said, is not super defensive. If the opponent starts to push some damage on you, you can get to the point where you're less than half health pretty easily and stabilize there by just doing a couple of key, 1 or 2 blocks. And then at that point, once you have quick to act online, if you can string out on the opponent next turn, this puts so much more pressure on them stopping your string that for at basically no cost, that it is a just wonderful card to have. And I want to see it basically every game. So I've moved it up to a 4 of. 0 diff, 5 check. Watch the checks, by the way, in this deck. Watch what we're doing here, because this is where one of the keys that really makes the deck function. But yeah, it's speed buff, and that means that your opponent has to commit more resources to block your stuff, and they're extra punished when they block then. Keen Observation. This is another 4 of in the deck. We have 2 main ways of causing the opponent to lose life, but they're consistent enough that you're going to trigger them every single game. And Keen Observation just adds an additional life loss. That's there for that extra guaranteed damage to help us make sure that we are killing the opponent as quick as possible. Otherwise, it's a 0 diff foundation with a 2 high block, which is pretty okay. Press Conference. And this is a 2 of in here. This is an okay card. I've tested it for a little while. Honestly, this is one of the least necessary cards, but it is really nice to have when you have Howitzer, Impact Cyclone, or Prominence Burn to guarantee. Again, we're trying to just manage our checks as much as possible, and this is kind of the best thing we got right now. It is a 1 difficulty, 5 check with a 2 high block with Enhance, Flip, reveal 1 attack in your hand. If the next attack you try to play this turn has the same name as the revealed attack, it gets -1 difficulty. Just helps make our Howitzers and our Prominence Burns just a little bit easier because we're really trying to commit as few foundations as possible. Ideally, you want to just commit like 1 on an attack when possible, if that, just so that you have something that's easy to like discard afterwards. But committing none in your first X attacks is obviously great too. Calling for backup. So this is also a very interesting card here because we're not full on latent skill, and latent skill in this deck is probably technically better, but this is that 1 diff. One thing we're really trying to do is watch our foundations. We're really thinking a lot about our resource management because Bakugo needs to build out pretty far early on. You need to get pretty decent builds right away so that you have the resources available in your pool to be able to discard those foundations, destroy those foundations to his effect. So I intentionally put this worse block, worse flip effect for Bakugo specifically because it is a 1 difficulty instead, which just so more, every now and then helps that string actually work so you don't end your turn too early. It has Enhance, Flip, draw 1 card. If this is not the first Enhance play, this Enhanced up, discard 1 card. There's obviously the advantage too of if you attack and then start with this, flipping it to draw a card, you can get an extra card in hand. It's just that Bakugo frequently has a card in his hand that he actively wants to discard, and sometimes I will wait to use the Calling for Backup just so I can discard that card, and that's where it's just worse than latent skill. But otherwise, there's just 2 of. It's just there to help trigger those and keep our attacks flowing, help us draw into more gas. Let's Fight Bad Guys. I have this as a 3 of in here. This is a 1 difficulty, 2 mid block, 5 check. With Enhance, Flip, your Fury attack gets +2 speed. This obviously just gives you speed on your attacks, and that's what it's there for. It's a 3 of because it does what it does is good, but it's not as integral to the rest of the deck. It's not as important as some of our other things. But it's certainly a good card. Getting that speed lets you get the attacks through. Arrogant Disposition. Now you might be wondering, okay, why is this a 4 of and the other one's a 3 of? Well, in this deck we're actually running 8 6 checks, and that is very, very intentional. We have upped this amount as much as possible, and in my testing, I swear to you, this is what wins you the games. I would not build Bakugo like this again without running at least 8 6 checks, and I'm looking forward to League of Villains to see how many more 6 checks I can start to fit in here. Because as Bakugo destroys his card pool, you start to be living just a little bit, not his card pool, sorry, he destroys his foundations, you start to be living just a little bit on a wing and a prayer, flipping those checks off the top of your deck. And plenty of times I've said, well, if this is a 6, then we're in a good position. Flip the 6. Boom. Nice and easy. That's how you do it. We run 8 6 checks in our 60 card deck to make sure that we are going to be flipping them when we need them. This is a 1 difficulty, 6 check, 2 low block. With Enhanced Commit, this punch attack gets -3 speed, and honestly, that's sometimes useful too. There's enough like Kirishima and Texas Smashy type Toru decks and all sorts of stuff like that where it's just kind of good to have that punch speed reduction. Rapid punches, we just faced rapid punches Ojiro last week, and I definitely appreciated having that -3 speed in play also. So it's a decent card with a 6 check. That's the important part. League Interview is a very nice card for this deck with a 6 check. It is the start of our 2 diff foundations with a 3 mid block. This has First Form. Discard the top 2 cards of your deck. Your next check to play an attack gets +1. That is obviously a nice way just to make sure that you can start your attacks without having to pay resources if you need to. Getting that +1 allows you to flip an attack on stun grenade or ignited arrow or nitro explosion and not have to pay anything. Of course, if you do have to pay things, that's also still kind of okay, because then you just have a committed foundation that you can not feel bad about discarding or destroying to Bakugo's Enhance. But either way, we still play this just to get a little bit of our check management in line. And also, when you do have to play defensively, that response to flip it to make a check to block, get +1, helps you manage your resources when you are being defensive, which does happen. You don't want to be like completely tunnel visioned in here. You do sometimes have to be defensive if you can't get your string started right. And if we're trying to manage our resources on attack, it's also important to try and manage them on defense a little bit. So great card for the deck. I could never see this going down below 4. This is a crucial card. Okay, so now we have Bakugo's special sort of, if you discard this or whatever during the enhanced step cards, there's 2 of them, Aggressive Temper and Burst Speed. Aggressive Temper is a 2 difficulty, 2 mid block, 5 check with response. After this card enters your discard pile during the attack's enhanced step, your attack is +2 damage. Obviously that works when you destroy the foundation using Bakugo's Enhance. It works when you discard the foundation from your hand using something like Calling for Backup or Latent Skill. And it works, importantly, some people still haven't caught this, I think. It works on Stun Grenade's second Enhance, which reveals 3 cards from your deck, adds a Fury attack to your hand, and then discards the remaining cards. Make sure you're always looking at what your non-attack cards are, because you don't want to miss an Aggressive Temper or a Burst Speed showing up in there, because you're missing out on free damage, free buffs. This one gives +2 damage to the attack. It, makes your attacks hit harder. And it kind of costs you nothing when you're like flipping a latent skill and discarding it to draw more attacks. It's actually just like, that's everything you want. We have to run 4 of these because this is where Bakugo gets his burst damage from sometimes. So we need them. The other one is Burst Speed. It's a very similar card. 2 difficulty, 2 mid block, 5 check. Bakugo response. This one had to be Bakugo only for some reason. After this card enters your discard pile during your attack's enhanced step, your rival loses 2 health. This effect cannot reduce your rival below 1 health. Again, it's another thing that turns on our Keen Observation to get a little bit of extra health loss, just like Prominence Burn does. And it just pushes the opponent closer and closer to death. Get them down there to the point where they have to block everything, and then when they have to block everything, you've got the win pretty much wrapped up, because nothing stops you. You just keep pitching from your card pool, drawing into attacks until they are out of there. Next, I have Cool Student as a 2 of. Cool Student has been always a little bit of a pet card for me. I really like this card quite a bit. This is I didn't mention this earlier, I guess, but this is one of our major uses of momentum in the deck. Honestly, I use this for my momentum more often than I do things like Powerful with Howitzer Impact. Cool Student allows us to turn our momentum into check value, which is perfect for when you are going deep and you are destroying your foundations. You have calculated how much damage you need to deal this turn, and you are pushing damage onto every attack, and you're like, I'm going to run out of resources here, but it's okay because on my last attack string, I built up a couple momentum. Now, once you get a little deeper in your pool, you start pitching your momentum to Cool Student to give +2 to your checks, which is usually at least +1 because you just keep discarding things from your card pool, and then you only have like 1 attack floating in your card pool or something. So it means that you are raw checking 3s and passing on these 4s deeper into your string, and that's just really nice. And then as a last ditch, you can use the Enhance to put it on top of your deck to make sure you check a 5. So I love Cool Student because you're going to go like discard a momentum +2 on my next next attack, discard a momentum +2 on my next attack. Then the next one, maybe you're out of a momentum, then you go, okay, well, I'm just going to put Cool Student on top. Now, instead of like hoping I check if I check a 3, then I'm okay. Now I just guarantee I check a 5. Then Cool Student gets checked on the next attack. That's you set up these strings just to try and kill the opponent and manage your resources that way. And of course, you can use both enhances if you want to check a 7 for something. Don't forget that is an option as well. Discard momentum, give your next check +2, then put this on top. Now you're checking a 7 for sure. If your string's going deep, that'd be if your opponent's like screwing with your card pool or just letting the attacks go through, which of course happens too. And then you don't have like nitros or prominence or something to remove them from your pool. Latent Skill. If anything could go up in this deck, it's maybe Latent Skill, because man, it is so good at what it does. It is a 2 difficulty, 5 check foundation with a 2 high block. Enhance flip, discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards. Lets you filter for more attacks, discards your latent speed, or your burst speed, your aggressive temper. Yeah, it's just great, but it's just it's a 2 diff, and we really wanted to play a lot of lower difficulty things in here just to make sure we can build out our foundations. early on as quick as possible. So, but yeah, I mean, feel free to toy with more copies of this if you like this, if you like playing this deck and see how they work. You just want to be careful. We're managing resources. That's what we're doing. And then finally, I have one Irrefutable Force of Nature in the main board. That's because sometimes you need to shut down some of those critical assets or foundations, usually foundations, defensive foundations that are going to stop you from getting in there. They're going to be reducing damage on your attacks or clogging your card pool or something. And this is, it's a card that's usually there when you need it. But I do side it out sometimes when my opponent just isn't playing sort of defensive package that is really going to disrupt Bakugo at all. Then you don't need it. You can put in some other stuff. So, but yeah, that's what it's there for. Anti-defensive tech. And then looking at our sideboard here, we have two more Irrefutable Force of Nature. This is, again, if the opponent's playing a very defensive package, especially like water ones that use things like sticky balls and stuff, I definitely am interested in putting more Irrefutables in just so that we can have the outs that we need between seizing the advantage and Irrefutables to try and shut down their defensive pieces. Encouragement is an interesting one here, I'm sure, to see in the sideboard, but what this is here for is sometimes your opponent's playing a deck that is just going to face tank attacks. I definitely think of things like Nomu here, and against those decks, if the opponent's like, okay, well, fine, I don't care, I'm just going to gain life, I'm like Recovery Girl, I'm just going to let you hit me, and then that's going to actually indirectly hurt the Bakugo player because now your card pool is going to get filled up unless you drew, exactly the right cards. And then you start to run out of resources to do things. So in those matchups, you need to get encouragements into the decks so that you have some extra ways to keep your string flowing, discarding unblocked attacks from your card pool using encouragement. Forcing Surrender, I hate Mineta. I hate Mineta. I do. And this is in here specifically because I hate Mineta. This has... It does have an anti-momentum thing, which is a nice flip after you play a combo ability, which you do have one of in the deck. Your rival discards one momentum. It can be useful occasionally, but really this is here for enhanced flip, discard one non-attack card from either player's card pool. Get that card pool clogging nonsense out of my pool. If the more your pool is clogged as Bakugo, the harder it is to manage those resources perfectly. So you need to put Forcing Surrenders in if your opponent's playing something like Mineta or something that is just trying to get some nonsense into your card pool. Put them in, deal with that. Finally, we have 2+ Ultras. Bakugo One is a set 1 character, which means he gets the full benefit of Plus Ultra. If your opponent's going to be throwing speedy big attacks, opponent's playing Ochako 2 or something, you just need to block everything. You can play this defensively, and then occasionally also it just wins you the game. As the set 1 character, first enhance, double your attack speed or damage. Usually with speed with Bakugo, damage isn't a problem. Double that speed, make it so that the damage is guaranteed to hit, pump the damage into it, and then take them out. So that is our set 1 Bakugo tech profile for the set 3 metagame. Now, League of Villains is coming very soon. I have not sat down to think about exactly how I'm going to be changing the deck when League of Villains releases. I am certainly going to tweak it a little bit more, but I have so much fun playing this deck. You will love this deck if you love just being able to string attack after attack and feel good about never having to pay extra. You will love this deck if you like to make the perfect check every time. You like to play a lot of 6s, check them, hit them. And you will love this deck if you are a Bakugo fan, because honestly, this deck feels just like Bakugo fights in the anime. Relentless, explosive, sometimes underestimated, showing way more power than he has any right to have, and being a strategist, a secret, very intelligent battler. That's what you're doing when you're playing this deck. Not that I call myself actually intelligent, but I do my best with this deck, and it has worked pretty well so far. So I highly recommend that you guys give this a shot if any of those sound good to you. This deck is going to struggle with decks that clog your card pool. It's really important to note that. That's why we have those Forcing Surrenders in there. And your opponent can learn tricks that make it harder on you, like just letting your attacks hit, which is okay also, depending. But you need to be ready for your opponent to adapt to you a little bit. And start to try and use that Bakugo Enhance to anticipate whether they're going to let attacks through or not. Bakugo has the tools he needs to manipulate your opponent right back, but you have to start to learn to play it correctly if you want to get through those matchups against the very, very clever opponents who are figuring out how to deal with it. But certainly a locals killer. Very fun deck to play that way, and I think you could certainly take this to a higher level tournament and get a nice top cut in there. I don't get a chance to travel to a lot of events or play deep into a lot of events, so feel free, take this, check it out, see if it can get you to a nice spot at your next regional or provisional or something. But that's going to do it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Another My Hero deck profile. We will have more of these coming very soon. We have not dropped the My Hero card game at all. In fact, we are running one of our biggest leagues ever right now in the main deck Discord. So if you want to hop in and play some fun, casual / competitive My Hero games on a sort of pick up and play basis, but with prizes, you should come on and join our Discord. Hit the description down below, find the link down there, join the Discord. We'd love to see you in there in our next league, and you can win your very own prizes that way, just for playing some webcam games for fun with your friends at the main deck Discord. So that's going to do it for today, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching another main deck video. Main Deck is sponsored by J-Dub Sports Cards and Gaming. Visit jwwcards.com and by our amazing patrons. Get exclusive content and other cool perks on the Main Deck Patreon. And hey, while you're here, I bet you'd like one of these videos. Go ahead, click one. I know you're gonna love it.